But let's start with the Cincinnati Bengals, and I want to break down the top 5 needs for Cincinnati here going into the offseason. And as I mentioned, surprise, surprise, all of which being on the defensive side of the football. Mike Brown, of course, announcing Duke Tobin, Zach Taylor are back for this offseason. Of course, they will oversee this offseason and, of course, be at their positions going into next season. And I was of the mind that they should bring Zach back just because of the continuity they have offensively, just because any given Sunday when they step out on the field, they can be the best offense in the National Football League. I think it's noteworthy, right? If you remove that, there's no guarantee that it will get better, right? It definitely could get worse, so I understand the organization kind of wanting to stand pat here. I was open about wanting to move off of Duke Tobin, but also if you bring a new GM in here or a de facto GM, he's going to want his people do things his way, and the reality of the situation is you're not that far. You're far away on defense, but as far as a full team, a full operation being far away from a Super Bowl championship, you're really not. You're really not. So it's maddening, right? Drives you crazy that they're just going to run this thing back. Certainly not surprising whatsoever. But when you really break it down to the studs, you go, well, what's the best chance that you can compete next year if you're the Cincinnati Bengals? It's probably running it back. You don't have time to rebuild here, right? Joe Burrow, T. against Jamar Chase, they're just getting older each and every year, and eventually they're going to be out of their primes. The last thing you can afford is just to kind of blow this thing up and say, yeah, we're going to totally redo everything in which we're doing. Lots of positivity on the offensive side of the football. They're going to keep those 2 guys in place. Duke Tobin, by the way, is going to speak on Friday, which definitely is noteworthy, something he doesn't typically do. By the way, this should be the new norm. He should speak at the end of the season each and every year. Probably should speak at the bye week as well, but he hasn't done that. That's going to change on Friday. Don't expect much. He's going to be very diplomatic, certainly, in his answers, but I'll be tapped in. You'll be tapped in, too, and we'll see what he has to say, answering some of the questions as to why Cincinnati had a 6-11 season and fell so short of expectations. But I want to roll through these positions of need here for Cincinnati this offseason, 5 of them that we are going to discuss, and as I mentioned, all of which on the defensive side of the football. The number 1 position for me, and I get people laugh at this, but the number 1 position for me is that safety spot. I know if you break it down position by position, which positions on the National Football League field are the most important. Quarterback 1, left tackle, edge rusher. I understand that safety may be at the bottom of the barrel a little bit, but the reality of the situation is this. The safety play for the Cincinnati Bengals ever since Jesse Bates departed has been miserable and has been a reason why you have lost so many games. Right, there were safeties in the draft last year. We talked about Malachi Starks having a heck of a year for Baltimore. We talked about Nick Amamwari having a heck of a year for one of the best defenses in the National Football League in the Seattle Seahawks. You did nothing at that safety spot. Caleb Downs is the name that I've thrown around. I'm going to continue to throw it around. I know Bengals fans across the city have been throwing that name around, but you need new guys at that spot. Geno Stone, he's not going to be back, right? I think that would push us all to the breaking point if he were to come back to this team. He's not going to be back. Tyson Anderson, by the way, is a free agent. Dejan Anthony, your 7th-round pick out of Ole Miss a couple of years ago, has proven that he is not capable of being a starter or even really being a role player in the National Football League. The only piece you have in place is Jordan Battle, and I've been very critical of Jordan Battle here on this show myself. I don't know if he's an answer as a guy that can be a starter going forward, but just because of all the holes that you have on the defensive side of the ball on this roster, I would expect Jordan Battle to be back as a starter next year. I have my issues with it, but that's probably what is going to happen. Safety to me is the top need. I get it. I get it's not edge rusher. I get it's not quarterback, left tackle. You could put it, if you're ranking all the positions, maybe it's at the bottom of the barrel as far as how valuable it is. But regardless of that, when you're that incompetent at any spot, I don't care if it's long snapper, at any spot in the National Football League, you're going to have serious trouble. That position needs to be fixed. We all said it last year. The Bengals neglected to do anything about it. We all sat there and said, that's horrible. What are you doing? You're crazy. You need to address this position. They didn't, and it cost them several games this year. To me, safety's 1. 2, defensive tackle, right? Again, talk about replacing a guy in Jesse Bates. The Bengals haven't been able to do that. Well, guess what? They haven't been able to replace DJ Reader at all since they let him walk and ultimately go to the Detroit Lions. They've tried different guys at that spot. The Sheldon Rankins experiment certainly blew up in their face. Look at him. He's starting, by the way, on the best defense in football. That's certainly a little bit frustrating over there in Houston with the Houston Texans. And then this year you brought in TJ Slayton. He, by the way, going to be under contract next year. Could he be part of the solution going forward? I think he started to play better football at the end of the year for the Cincinnati Bengals, but regardless, regardless, you need new bodies in there. Because when we talk about guys under contract, it's him, it's B.J. Hill, and it's McKinley Jackson. And in case you forgot, McKinley Jackson, of course, has already requested a trade. That was done during the season, around when Logan Wilson, of course, requested a trade there as well. His was granted. McKinley Jackson's was not. He got himself on the field a little bit more, but was it great? Was it third-round talent? Absolutely not. That's a huge position. Right? If you decide not to go safety in the first round, if Caleb Downs is off the board, you look at that defensive tackle spot. You pick the best one on the board, and you pick somebody that can come in there, shore up that run defense, and also provide some pressure from the interior. You look at these defenses across the NFL. Those guys that line up from the guards, that line up across from the centers, it's not just about stopping the run. You also have to find ways to provide pressure on the opposing quarterback, and that hasn't happened in years here in Cincinnati, right? DJ Reader was great against the run, but as far as guys getting sacks on the interior of your defensive line, we haven't seen that in ages, and that's certainly something that needs to get cleaned up for this team. So you're going to have a lot of options. By the way, you have a ton of cap space. Offensively, you literally have to do nothing. If you signed Dalton Reisner, you're good. Right? That's the right guard is the one spot that you have to address. Reiser's been vocal about wanting to come back. You sign him, you literally can dedicate all of your time and resources to the defensive side of the football, and you have some serious cap space to work with, especially considering Trey Hendrickson, hopefully, is going to be off the books for the Cincinnati Bengals. But defensive tackle is huge. Got to figure it out. Got to get a big body in there that has some athleticism that can apply some pressure on the opposing quarterback. Next up is linebacker. It was basically unprecedented when Zach Taylor said early in the year, screw it, we're starting 2 rookies at that linebacker spot. I can't remember the last time that has happened in the National Football League. It's just not something that you see. And you don't see it because it doesn't work. And it clearly didn't work for the Cincinnati Bengals this year. Look, both these guys are going to be back. All right, that's frustrating. I mean, you took one in the second round. You took one a couple of rounds after that, of course, and Barrett Carter. But they both cannot be starting. And I think a lot of us would like to see neither one of them starting. Got to give Demetrius Knight some flowers. Probably had the best game of his career, the final game of the year, of course, against Cleveland last Sunday. Maybe he's a guy that you could start, but by golly, you cannot start Barrett Carter next year. By all accounts, he's a good dude. He's a good teammate. He's got his head screwed on properly. I can respect and appreciate all those attributes to him in his game. That doesn't mean he should be out there as a starting linebacker for the Cincinnati Bengals. Again, is that a position you would address in the draft, or a position that you would address in free agency, or both? Probably both. Oren Burks is still going to be under contract, so those are your 3 guys in that room here at this point. Bring in a veteran that has played high-level football, that can be a leader for you and be a good tackler for you on this defense. Draft a guy at the top of this draft. Shoot, and we're going to talk Ohio State here in a couple minutes with Bill Rabinowitz. I'm not an Ohio State Buckeye fan, but if Downs is not there and it's Sonny Styles, or shoot, if Arvell Reese somehow slips down to 10, those are guys that you should have your eye on. I think a lot of people would say Styles at 10 would be a little bit aggressive, but I know Sonny Styles is going to be a good NFL player. I know he's going to be a solid NFL linebacker. Maybe it's a bit of a reach, but there's assurances that he's going to be good. It's not like a Shamar Stewart, right, where it's like, well, there was no production in college, but he's pretty big and he moves around pretty quickly and he can bench press a lot of weight. That's all we're talking about here with guys like Sonny Styles, Arvell Reese, and Caleb Downs there as well. So I'm not an Ohio State guy by any means, but at that 10 spot, if one of those 3 dudes is there, that's probably going to be a good pick. Have to address the linebacker position early in the draft, or go out and get a stud in free agency, because it will drive, certainly the fan base, all of us here at Chatterbox, nuts, and certainly you as well, if they roll out Demetrius Knight Jr. and Barrett Carter week 1 next year. Absolutely. Can't happen. Corner. That's another position that you need to address. All right, corner, right? You got Dax Hill, you got DJ Turner. Yeah, but who do you have behind that? You need some depth pieces. We talk about the Bengals kind of getting lucky when it comes to their injuries this year. I understand 2 of their best players got hurt. Joe Burrow, Trey Hendrickson. When players like that get hurt, you're in a world of trouble. But beyond that, pretty healthy year for Cincinnati, and it still only resulted in 6 wins for this football team. You remember Dax Hill and DJ Turner have constantly been getting banged up throughout their career to this point. They were available each and every week for this football team. DJ Turner, there's going to be extension talks about him. He's under contract next year, certainly. Bengals picked up the 5th-year option at Dax Hill. He's under contract. There's going to be extension talks with him this offseason as well. And I think if you put better pieces, the people that are hesitant to really crown those 2 guys, I understand that. They're not perfect players by any stretch. But I think if you put more quality players around them, they would look even better than they do for the Cincinnati Bengals, if that makes sense. But you need some depth pieces, right? DJ Ivey will be back, third down, lengthy cornerback. You'd like that. 7th-round pick. Seems to be a nice pick by Duke Tobin a couple of years ago out of Miami, right? And certainly another guy that's going to be back is Josh Newton. Fig Newton, I think, had some moments this year, and if somebody gets hurt, he's going to be a guy that you need to count on. And I'm not saying draft a corner at the top of this draft, but I definitely think you need to pick one and pick up a veteran in free agency. We've been saying that for years. How great was Mike Hilton for this team? Yeah, he was great because he could blitz off the edge, and he was a sure tackler, and he was a tough physical dude despite his stature. There's also some leadership components that he brought. The Bengals don't have any leaders on the back end of that defense, and if they do have one leader, it's Geno Stone, and candidly, he's not good enough to be a leader, right? If one of your leaders on defense is also your worst player, that doesn't really jive very well for a lot of these guys. Right there, and I can understand that, right? And I think you certainly can understand that listening at home there as well. So I think corner's a position that you need to address. You need to add some depth there. But you feel good. You feel good about the starters that you have. Moving Dax Hill back to the outside certainly was positive. You've asked him to do a lot of different things throughout his time here in Cincinnati. Has he lived up to a first-round pick? Probably not. But he can absolutely be a starter on a defense that wins a world championship. Not a doubt in my mind about that. But we'll monitor the extension talks. Maybe Cincinnati wants to bring him into a long-term deal and say, you know what, you're going to be a part of our solution going forward. But that's certainly going to be very interesting. Him and Turner, will they both get extended? Will one of them get extended? Or will the front office say, we like both of you, but we're just going to let you play out your contract here, the final year that you're under contract here with this team, and then go from there. I think that would probably be a mistake. Right? Because we all sit here and we talk about this defense and how bad they are, and we all understand that, right? But some of these guys have to be part of your future. And I think you can feel pretty solid about Dax Hill and DJ Turner being a part of your future going forward. And lastly, edge rusher. I've been very clear here on this show what I would do with Trey Hendrickson. I think, we appreciate all that he has done. I've said it a million times, greatest free agent signing in the history of this franchise. Time to move on, right? Things have been really ugly in previous off seasons for him, and I get he was hurt. Nobody knows how serious he was hurt other than Trey Hendrickson here at this point. You appreciate him for what he's done, but you move on. You move on at that spot. You don't try to get into a contract negotiation with him again. Right? He's proven that he's a selfish player. Didn't do much before he was hurt. Again, appreciate, respect what he has done. Turn the page going forward. And I think you have a little bit more optimism doing that now than you did certainly at the beginning of the year, because Myles Murphy showed that he is a competent football player. Can he be a one for you? Can he be a closer for you? That remains to be seen. Not ready to go out there and say that he is. But at this point, you feel solid about Myles Murphy going forward. But you really only got 3 guys under contract there at that edge rusher spot. You got him. Of course, you got Shamar Stewart, who showed some signs of life going forward. We've been very hard on Shamar Stewart, and rightfully so, here at this show. But the reality is, the Bengals took him 17 overall last year. They're not going to quit on him yet. As much as a lot of us would like for them to quit on him here at this point, they can't afford to do that. And Zach and Duke have spoken glowingly about him and his work ethic, and we'll see if he can do the right things this offseason and be a more productive player for Cincinnati. But in the defense of Shamar Stewart, he wasn't able to stay out on the field as much as certainly the Bengals or he would have liked. And beyond that, it's Cedric Johnson. He's going to be back. Looks like a potential diamond in the rough type of guy from a couple of years ago out of Ole Miss in the 6th round. He certainly had showed some signs of getting home to the quarterback, applying some pressure, being solid off the edge in the run game there as well. And I think that's certainly very productive. And I think you feel pretty good about him going forward. But you need that closer. You need that star that you can rely on when the defense has to make a stop. And there's been several opportunities throughout the year to this point where the defense had a chance to either close the game or get the ball back to the offense with the chance to go win the game, and each and every time they failed, and they failed miserably, and we'll see how they address that position going forward. But the top 5 needs, all of which on the defensive side of the ball for the Cincinnati Bengals. Yeah, you got questions at right guard. Maybe you re-sign Dalton Reisner. That's fine, but all of your time, resources, and dedication should go towards the defensive side of the ball and looking to get that cleaned up for 2026.